Hello everyone, today I'm with R.J. Barker.
Hello, bonjour.
Who is the author of the Wandered Kingdom trilogy.
Yes.
So the first book, it's called L'Âge des Assassins in French. So here is the cover. It just got released this year.
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit more about the story?
Yeah, it's. I've got to be careful because it's a murder mystery. So if I tell you too much, it kind of ruins it. It's the story of Girton Clubfoot, and there's a kind of clue in his name. He's got a clubfoot, and he's sort of an apprentice. He's not really an apprentice assassin because he's very good at it, but he's with his mistress or master in my version, but in French it's slightly different. And they go to a castle because they think they have a job to kill somebody, but it turns out to be a trap. And they've been trapped by the queen of this castle. And she knows somebody wants to kill her son, and she's thought, well, what better way to catch an assassin than to use someone who's really good at it. And she basically uses Girton as leverage against his mistress to get them to solve this crime. But they don't really want to. And the person that they have to save isn't really very nice, but they don't really have a choice in it. And sort of the other, there's plot on what the book's about, and it's really about the relationships that the two people have, because it's sort of two mother and child relationships. And then there's magic. It's a society under stress, because if you use, I'm not spoiling other questions, am I?
No.
Oh, good.
Sorry.
Right. I'll carry on then. I talk a lot. It's if you use magic in this world. If I was a magician and I used magic, then sadly you would die, and everyone underneath me in the building would die, because I would use their life and the grass and the plants, and then nothing would ever grow again in this area. It will be a desert, and there have been some major horrific events that have happened in the past. So also people who have magic are hunted down and killed in not particularly nice ways. I wouldn't want to die that way, would you?
No.
No, they don't. No. So there's that, and because of that, there's not enough food, and it's quite. It's called the Tired Lands, and I think that's a good name for it. I don't know how it translates in French.
Littérature. Yeah. How did you get inspired to write this story and this universe?
It's really weird because it felt like cheating. I didn't really expect to end up writing a fantasy book. I thought I'd end up writing a crime book or a science fiction book, because they would tend to be what I was drawn to. And I'd written a very complex science fiction book that it turned out was too complex because no one wanted to buy it. But I spoke to an editor as part of that, and we had a big conversation about Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple, and also Sherlock Holmes and things like that, which I love stuff like that. I love mystery. And it planted something in my head, and then I was sat there writing what was sort of safe for me to do next, and people suggested I might want to do, and I just don't like being told what to do, really. I had this idea, and I thought that's quite a good idea, actually. But it sort of appeared in my head, fully formed, except he wasn't called Girton, he was called Gorton, which is awful. And I read the whole book thinking that's wrong.
I know.
Yeah. And then there was a typo of Girton in it, and I thought, oh, that's right. But you say jeton.
Jeton.
Yeah. So there was that, but it kind of like appeared in my head as a full idea, and I knew the end of it, I knew the middle of it, I knew all the characters just about, and then there's some that appeared as I went through it, like there's a character called Hemus who plays an important part, and a girl called Drussel who plays an important part, and they weren't in my head until I got to them. But it really felt like cheating. It was kind of like he was whispering in my ear when I was writing it. It was so easy to write. I wrote it in 6 weeks, sort of flew through it. Yeah, and people have always said to me that you write a thing and you know it's going to sell, and I thought that's not true. That's not true at all. You can't, but I did. I should say, truthfully, I've thought of that about every book I've ever written, and most of them have not sold. And some of them are very, very bad indeed. So you can't really tell. But it felt a cut above everything else I'd ever done.
Okay. I really liked both of these characters, like the character of Gerton and the character of his mistress, Mirella.
Yeah.
They are like these really great and fierce assassins in a way, but when they're together, they really care about each other.
Yeah.
And it was really touching to read about them. It was really nice to get to know them.
Yeah. I'm a really positive person.
Yeah.
And I love people, and I love history as well. And I'm aware that sort of, if you go back 200 years, then to us, you kind of go to a horrible place. If you lived there, it'd be normal, so it'd be okay. But I didn't want to write something that was deeply unpleasant. I wanted to write something that with someone I liked, because you have to spend a lot of time with them if you're writing. You don't want to sort of think, oh God, not you again. And I wanted to write something that was above all hopeful, and I think he's got a bit of he's a bit of an innocent in a lot of ways. He's very dangerous. He could come in and kill us both like that. But he wouldn't, because we're not nasty. But he's quite emotionally immature. I've gone off the topic, haven't I? No, I know. But I became my little boy's 8 now, and being a parent was had a massive sort of effect on me, and I wanted her to be always there for him. She's not his parent. She bought him as a slave, but she's it's like an avatar of that very fierce and complete love you feel for a child. That's sort of how I thought of her. And also she's quite serious. Yeah. But you can tell that she's there for him.
Yeah, but she's serious, but in a way she's always here for him, and she always looks at everything that happens in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like sometimes Gerton, he's a bit less self-confident, but he's younger too.
Yeah.
But she's always like really supportive.
Yeah.
With him.
Yeah. There's two mother and child relationships, and you have the Queen. And Queen Adran and her son Ador, and though they've had like every opportunity in life, their relationship is very dysfunctional. Yeah. And that's kind of a mirror of what Gerton and Merilla have. That they've had no opportunities. Their life has been really quite awful, but what holds them together is this fierce love they have for each other that they never talk about. But they both know, and I don't think they ever would mention it. And the books, the whole trilogy is about that relationship between them. So I've written them all now, so I know what happens, but I'm being very careful.
Okay.
We've gone off topic, haven't we? We've gone.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
well, I do everything. I derailed a panel, conference.
Yeah, at Les Imaginaires?
Yeah, I started asking my own questions. And my translator was going, she's called Helen, if she watches this. Hello, Helen, she was lovely.
The second book, it's already out in English, and the third one
comes out in August.
Really soon,
Yeah.
Are you already thinking about another writing project?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm already writing a thing that it's not this. It's completely different because I get bored very quickly, and I'm not bored of them, but I've done what I wanted to do with Merilla and Gerton, and it's a complete story, and I'm really happy with the way. And I don't really want to. It doesn't work like a traditional trilogy for fantasy in that each book is completely separate.
Okay.
You read that, you don't have to read the next one to find out the story. The story is complete. And then Blood of Assassins is the same. It's a complete story. It's a bit more violent because it takes place during it's a bit spoiler. It's not that spoiler. It takes place during a war, does the second one, and the events of that book have a knock-on effect. But it's 5 years later. There's a 5-year break, and then between the second book and the third one, there's a 16-year break. Okay. So you kind of get Gerton. I wanted to pick 3 pivotal moments in his history, in his life that make him who he is, and that's what the book's about.
Okay.
And it sort of, but if I ever wanted, I could go back and write in between. But I'm not going to. Okay. No. Probably, I don't know if people want me to. But the next thing is I've just been to Imaginal and Robin Hobb was there, which is lovely. It's really, really nice. But if you write a first-person book about assassins, everyone immediately goes, "Oh, Robin Hobb." Yeah. And I was talking to her, and I was saying it wasn't a conscious thing. I wasn't trying to ape what you'd done. There's a writer called C.J. Sansom. I was trying to ape him, but he's ignore that. I can tell you all the people I was trying to copy. And I was talking about what I'm doing next, and I was saying, I'm doing ships next. And at the moment I said it, I just thought, oh, that's what you did. She was looking at me and going, I was like, no, it's not what you think, Robert. But yeah, I'm doing ships next, but it's kind of Napoleonic type ships with big 3 masts, but in a very different fantasy world with ships and dragons. But only, well, I can't, that's a spoiler. How could I describe it? It's called The Bone Ships, and it's about, don't get bored because I'm making lots of pauses. It's a world without wood, and they had these massive dragons, sea dragons, sort of sea monsters really, but dragons is a better word. And they've hunted them to extinction, but they used their bones to build these ships. Okay. So that's what they're called bone ships, because they're made out of bone. It was very imaginative of me. And that's what I'm doing now. And it's about somebody on one of these ships doing ship type things in a very fun, and there's magic and I'll show you some pictures. No, I can't. I've not got them with me. But there are some pictures, but I'm not allowed to show them to anybody yet.
When you're writing something, do you have some authors, like maybe Robin Hobb, you're looking up to, or some books that influence your writing? Yeah.
My influences. There's a book called The Chronicles of Bookeen by C.J. Cherryh, which was published, I think, in the late 80s or 90s, that I came across in I kind of have to explain this. I've never really had any money. I've always been quite poor, and all my books came from second-hand shops. So my writing is kind of what my influences of what happened to be in second-hand shops rather than what I could afford to go and buy from bookshops. And I found it in a second-hand shop, and it's amazing. Chronicles of Bookeen by C.J. Cherryh. It's out of print now. C.J. Sansom, who I mentioned, writes historical whodunits, and then in a lot of the 1930s writers of whodunits. Ian Banks, science fiction, just writes big spaceships. And probably the biggest influence, and the book I've read the most, and I think you've just got it in France in translation. I didn't know it hadn't come over here, because it's a huge book in England, is Watership Down.
That's telling me something, yeah.
Yeah, about talking rabbits, which makes it sound a lot less than it is. It's a beautiful and clever book, and I like that. And it's a book about stories, and in a way that's a book about stories. They tell stories within the story and things like that. But yeah, and I've read. It's really weird. I've read the first of Robin Hobb's Assassins books a long time ago. I think it must have been when it first came out, but it wasn't a conscious influence. And after I'd sold that, my publisher had said one of the reasons they like it is because it reminds them of Robin Hobb. And I went back and read it again, and and thought, oh yeah, I can see like, and I think clearly when I read it, it's lodged in my head somewhere, because there's definite echoes of her in it. And also, do you get 2000 AD in France, the comic?
I don't know. Maybe.
There's a comic called 2000 AD that we have in the UK, and there was a character called Slain in that, who was like a barbarian, a bit like Conan but more Celtic, and that was a huge influence. And Antlers. I don't know how it translates in French. Antlers.
Yeah.
We do.
Les bois.
Les bois.
Yeah.
Les bois. Les bois. J'adore les bois. My house is covered in antlers.
Oh, okay.
There's a picture from Slane of a man on a horse, and he's got like a mask on with these huge antlers.
Okay.
And do you know Herne the Hunter over here? Is that a mythical figure here, or is it just a British mythical figure?
Who?
Herne the Hunter.
Herne the Hunter.
He's kind of a mythical pagan figure, and he's a spirit of the forest, and he's an antlered man.
No, I don't think so. Maybe.
But that's another thing that kind of stuck in my head. But
Okay.
my influences are all over the place.
Because in the book, their horses have antlers. They're really beautiful. I think I went a bit on your Facebook page, and I think I saw a drawing.
A picture,
or a picture.
I'll
and
put it on my phone.
It was really nice.
Yeah, it's
really beautiful.
I call them mounts, and there's things in the book that some people have really hated, which is good because you don't want everyone to like stuff, because that means you've done something quite middle of the road. You want some people to hate it, but they call them mounts, and the people that ride on them are called riders, and they have a sword for stabbing people with, and that's called a stab sword. I don't know if it's that literal in French, is it?
I don't remember.
Because you wouldn't, because they're really boring names. But they're meant to be, because it's meant to be a society that's struggling, and they don't like have time for imagination, which is that, we missed out, they dress up as jesters. And they tell stories, and that's kind of how they sneak into places, because these jesters are always welcome. But they're the only people that tell stories, really, and I liked that idea. But they have really boring names for things because they don't have time to make stuff up. They're too serious and being angry with each other. But the mount in that is called Zeus, and he's named after their god of death, because he brings death. It's their little joke that only they know. But he is kind of quite a strong character, but he never speaks. He's just sort of there. And it was really, it was very unconscious, but when you read it back, they've got a sarcastic horse, I think. But it just sort of, it's just like, but if you go to my Facebook, there's a picture drawn by an artist called Tom Parker. He's also doing some drawings of Merilla that are quite, I'll show you afterwards, but I'm not meant to show them to anybody. I'll show them to you, but I can't show them to you, sorry. One day. There'll also be, when Blood of Assassins comes out, Tom has done a map. But it's not in the book. And it's for a special edition in the UK. But I'm going to have a black and white version on my website that people will hopefully just be able to download. It's really beautiful if you like maps. I told you I just can't stop talking.
It's really interesting, so it's great. What do you enjoy the most in writing fantasy?
I just enjoy writing, but I like using my imagination. I like to be able to make things up, and this is, you won't hear many fantasy writers say this. One of the reasons I like writing fantasy and science fiction as well is because you can be really lazy. If you're writing something that's in the real world or historical, then you have to go away and look it up. But in fantasy or science fiction, you can just make it up, and I'm really lazy. I do really genuinely love to make stuff up. It's the most fun you can have. But when they fight, there's a style to it. It's very stylized. It's kind of meant to feel like a weird, be quite beautiful and odd, and every move is named, and it all feels very deliberate. And I wrote it on the fly, and I loved writing it. It's really fun to write. But I didn't take any notes. So when I came to write the second one, I suddenly realised that I'd set this thing up with all these names, and then no idea what I'd done. So I had to spend ages going back through the book, checking that every time I was using the right one. My editor was she told me as well, you should be writing all these down. I'm like, I'll be all right. No, she was right. Your editor's always right. I've learnt that. Hey, Jenny, you know that. But I like that. I like the freedom of writing fantasy, and I love history as well. And fantasy sort of leans on history a lot. So that's quite joyous for me.
Yeah. Okay. And last question.
Okay.
What was the last book that you read that you really liked?
The last book that I read that I really liked. I don't tend to read fantasy when I'm writing it because I'm terrified that I'll just steal. Because I don't think very much. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm just a good idea will lodge in the back of my head, and then 2 years later I'll think, oh, that was a good idea I had, and it'll be somebody else's. So I've been reading at the moment the Spencer books by Robert B. Parker, which are sort of a 1970s and 80s detective books, and they're quite fun. But the best book I've read very recently is called Slow Horses by Mick Herron, which is a spy book. It's not usually my type of thing, spy books, but it's brilliant. I sulked for a week after reading it. It's that good. Yeah, but I don't know if it's been translated, but if it has, it's very good. And fantasy-wise, I read The Priest of Bones by Pete McLean. I got an early copy of that, and that's very good. Yeah. Have you read it?
No.
Oh, watch out for that. It's quite grim, but it feels like a writer who's just found the thing they really enjoy doing, and it absolutely works. So that's my recent reading.
Okay. Thanks very much.
It's been a joy. Thank you for having me.
Me too. Thanks.